Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for signing up and for coming. We are just so excited that so many people did sign up. At this point, there are over 120 people who've signed up. And so I think this is going to be really big. We've been working on this now just for 2 or 3 months, getting ready for now. And it's a work in progress. We may find all sorts of improvements that you guys will suggest, so I hope you will. Now, most of you, I'm sure, are already familiar with Plant Nova Natives, which is a social marketing campaign that's the joint effort of over 150 local organizations, government, nonprofit, for-profit. They're all pooling their resources to promote the use of native plants in Northern Virginia landscapes. But this year, we also launched Plant Nova Trees, which is a 5-year regional campaign to promote the planting and preservation of native trees. Our goal is to significantly increase native tree canopy, both for all the benefits of trees to humans, such as healthy environment, beauty, stormwater control, carbon sequestration, and a cooler environment, lower air conditioning costs, but also for the benefit of our local ecosystem. As it happens, the Virginia Department of Forestry has a goal of 600,000 new trees by 2025. But as we take a look around, it becomes immediately obvious that it takes a whole lot of little itty bitty saplings to provide the benefits of one mature tree, and that we're losing mature trees at an alarming rate. There are a lot of contributors to that loss, such as construction projects, poor tree care, climate change, diseases, and people just plain cutting them down, healthy trees, because they don't happen to like them. We need to figure out ways to approach each of these issues, and we would welcome volunteers to help us devise strategies for any of them. But this particular project is designed to work on just one very visible problem: loss of trees because of invasive non-native vines. I'm sure that many of you are eager to do the physical work of rescuing trees from non-native vines, and there are a lot of organizations that are set up to conduct invasives removal with volunteers. And we hope if you're up to it, you'll seek them out and start digging in, so to speak. We've listed the ones we know about on our website, and we're continuing to gather that information to have a complete list. If you know of something that I should know about, let me know. It's incredibly gratifying work to save the trees from a vine. But what this program is about is trying to magnify our efforts far beyond what any one of us can do. Our goal is to recruit essentially the entire populace to look at their own properties and take action to save those trees. This may be on individual residences or on common land. Every tree has a human or a group of humans that is responsible for its welfare. The problem is that in many cases, they seem to be completely unaware of it. So we made a 5-minute video to explain the program, and I will show it now. Here we go.
Can you imagine our community without its many species of native trees and the birds and butterflies they support? But wait a minute, what's this? There is something seriously wrong with these trees. Are trees supposed to be fuzzy? They sure aren't supposed to be smothered. Someone needs to tell the owners before their trees are strangled to death and collapse on their houses. Well, guess what? That someone is us. Most people have no idea that Japanese honeysuckle, Asian wisteria, and oriental bittersweet wrap around trees and strangle them as they grow, or that porcelain berry and kudzu will cut off light and smother them, or that English ivy will weigh them down so they fall over during storms. This is why we have started the Community Tree Rescuers program. It's up to us to let people know so that they can take action. So how many trees are we talking about? Well, recently a volunteer in Tacoma Park, Maryland, counted nearly 5,000 trees at risk from invasive vines in that 2-square-mile town. If Northern Virginia is anything like Tacoma Park, we may have as many as 3 million trees at risk. Pretty crazy, huh? This is how you can help. First, take a look at the Plant Nova Trees website to educate yourself about these vines. Walking only on sidewalks or public areas, look for trees that have vines growing on them. Try to identify the vines if you can. If you can't, don't worry. It won't always be possible, especially if you are viewing them from a distance. Finally, drop off a brochure with the landowner to alert them to the problem. It's also important for us to figure out how big this problem really is, so our community leaders and elected officials can make an overall plan of action. Here's how to help. Keep a tally of how many at-risk trees you find on each property. Estimate how many acres you surveyed. We have several suggestions on our website for how to do that, either by measuring it on a map or by guesstimating. Then submit the data on the reporting form. Have you noticed that these tree-killing vines have something in common? They were all imported from other parts of the world where they left their natural enemies behind. Besides killing trees, why else does this matter? It is because most insects can only eat the plants with which they evolved. If we don't have native plants, we won't have those insects, nor any of the other critters that eat insects. Birds, dragonflies, lady beetles, frogs, salamanders, etc. The entire ecosystem falls apart, and that in fact is what we're seeing. So be sure to choose native plants for your yard and don't plant the invasive ones. By now, you are probably itching to get out there and kill those vines. That's actually not part of the Community Tree Rescuers program, but there are many organizations that need volunteers. They will tell you their safety protocols, which are important to follow. But if a homeowner asks you what they can do on their own property, here is a quick summary. Most invasive vines are perennial and will regrow from the roots. Simply cutting the vine near ground level will kill the plant above the cut and buy time for the tree until the landowner can arrange for a more permanent solution to keep the vines from growing back. That would usually involve either pulling the plant up by its roots or applying herbicide to the freshly cut stump. For English ivy or other vines that are stuck to trees, cut a 6-inch section and carefully remove it without pulling bark off the trunk. For vines that wrap around or drape on trees, cut them close to the ground and again at shoulder height so they won't have a ladder to climb back up on. Annual vines such as Mila Minute and Japanese hops die in the winter but come back from seed, so the trick is to pull them up by the roots before they go to seed. Before cutting anything, it is important to make sure it is not a native vine. Native vines are meant to grow on native trees. Examples include native grapes, greenbrier, Virginia creeper, trumpet creeper, and even poison ivy. Once they get up high, they flower and produce berries for the birds in the fall and winter. Their leaves feed many species of caterpillars. A very good rule of thumb is to never kill anything if you aren't sure what it is. It will take a lot of people to spot all the trees at risk in Northern Virginia, so the more you can spread the word and recruit your friends to help, the more trees we can save. Let everyone know that the fate of our local ecosystem is in our hands and that the time to act is now.
Okay. In addition to promoting tree rescues, a secondary goal of this program is to increase awareness of the value of native trees in general and the undesirability of using invasive plants in our landscape. You're going to be the ambassadors for the trees. This means you need to pull out your skills of diplomacy. Of the many problems caused by invasive plants, we figure that the problem of tree-killing vines will be the least controversial and the least likely to put people on the defensive. We hope people will be happy that a member of the community took the time to warn them against something that might make their tree hazardous and cost them a lot of money. but people spring quickly into defensive mode if they think you're criticizing them or their choice of ground cover. So the key here is to have a very light touch, never argue, be totally friendly, and look at the big picture. It's totally fine to let the brochure do the talking. You don't need to knock on anyone's door. And in fact, in most cases, it's probably better not to. Another goal is to document the problem the way they did in Tacoma Park. We're never going to have enough people to survey every single tree in Northern Virginia, but it would be great if we could get a lot of information in different types of environments and be able to extrapolate. Good public policy is going to depend on good numbers. Or putting it another way, it's harder to ignore a problem when the economic losses are made public. So when you get done with your neighborhood, please consider continuing in other places. We hope you will keep track of residential areas separately from other areas such as common land, libraries, parks, etc. And we have separate reporting forms for purely residential surveys. At this point, we have over 100 volunteers, which means that you merely need to survey 30,000 trees apiece to get the job done. So who can you recruit to join this campaign? You could consider printing off some flyers to post, or ask your friends and family, or post it in community newsletters or social media, or whatever you can think of. For those of you who live in community associations or in apartments, quantifying the problem will give you the information you need to work with your board or whoever the owner is to devise a solution for the trees at risk in common areas. It helps a lot not to be the lone voice. So is there at least one other respected person in your community that you could team up with? The idea would be to work with your community to come up with a long-term plan for stewardship of these areas. In most cases, or at least in many, if not most, that will involve hiring professional companies to do the invasives control. You may be able to work with your current landscaping company if they're willing, and you might be able to be the expert on the spot and perhaps tag the native vines that should be saved. We're planning to create a web page on good management practices in community settings, which will of course include controlling invasives. Good management practices in general for helping trees in a community setting. I almost have that webpage ready to go out. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. You're going to want to make a note for yourself of what you see on each property, but we only need to hear the total number of trees at risk in the survey area and the total number of properties where you have already or will be dropping off a brochure. So which trees should you count? The tree in the foreground, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong picture. A tree that's completely smothered is an obvious candidate. But what we're trying to do is mimic what they've done in Tacoma Park and count trees that are at serious risk. So don't count tiny little seedlings, but do count anything that's made it over a couple feet or so high, a couple feet high, unless you happen to know that it's an invasive tree species, in which case we wouldn't count it, but we're not expecting anyone to be able to tell the difference necessarily. So what do we mean by something being at risk? That would include English ivy, perhaps over a quarter of the way up a tree, something like that, or porcelain berry, where you're starting to see it cover the leaves of the canopy, or wisteria that's encircled the trunk, so it's going to strangle it as it grows. But if a homeowner just has vines starting to crawl up, then early prevention is, of course, the best way to go. So even though you're not going to necessarily count this in your survey count, you're still going to want to drop off a brochure for that homeowner. You can definitely get started in winter. In fact, we learned that our hero in Tacoma Park, who surveyed 5,000 trees by himself, actually did that in the winter. But you may want to go back in the growing season to spot some of the deciduous vines if they aren't as badly off as these trees. So when you send Heidi your reports, she's going to put them all up on one master map. and link to it from our website. That way you'll get to see which areas have already been surveyed and what people have been reporting. If you have any kind of computer skills, it's very easy to make a map and email it to us. We made actually another little video, it's only 100 seconds long, to show you how to do that. But if you don't feel like doing that on the computer, that's totally fine too. You would just send Heidi a description of the area you surveyed, for example, with the street boundaries or the house numbers, and she'll use that description to draw the map. Heidi is putting together a packet for each of you with brochures in English and Spanish, a name tag, and a few stickers to display or to give to other people to display. We also almost have that. The Spanish brochure is just in the process of being ordered, so we're not ready quite yet, but we will be quite soon. Postage for this many packages would really add to the cost. So what Heidi's planning to do is to send bunches of them to volunteers scattered around the region and hope that you'll go pick them up from that volunteer. Most of these have been funded by people such as yourselves making donations, so please try not to waste them. We've ordered thousands and thousands of these materials, and we are eager to get them out all over Northern Virginia. So if you have a way to distribute them, for instance, at events or at schools, all you have to do is fill out a form on our website on the campaign materials page. And another volunteer we have will mail them to you from his house. And by the way, we have really big ambitions, but this means we're going to need to buy a lot more stuff. So any donations you care to make would be very welcome. Our partnering organizations donated seed money to start the tree campaign, and we've already spent more than half of it in the first 5 months of this 5-year campaign. If you want to make yourself look more official, you could buy yourself a hat or a face mask on our Cafe Press site. We don't make any profit from these sales because we want the price to be as low as possible. Also on our website is a link to a blank document you could use as letterhead if you want to write a note to the tree owners in addition to the brochure. Or you might even consider writing everyone in your neighborhood ahead of time before you drop off the brochures to kind of give them a heads up. Or maybe use nextdoor.com or some local Facebook group to announce this program. One of the main ideas here is to take the native plant movement out to the people where they live and make it seem more real to them by demonstrating the difference between a native plant that benefits the ecosystem and an invasive one that helps destroy it. So if you recognize the species of tree that's at risk, for example, you might call it out to them. You could say, your beautiful native red maple tree is being threatened by the invasive non-native English ivy. How much time you put into this is entirely up to you. If you just want to do your own street, that's great. But if you can keep going, that would be even better. So for example, with the other people from Clifton who are signed up, I would love over the next year or two if we could get together and cover the entire greater Clifton area. I'd also like to get together with them to survey our parks. All right, so now for the hard part. How do you tell if a vine is invasive or native? What if you make a mistake? For the purposes of our educational and reporting program, it really doesn't matter. Our reports are occasionally inflated by a native vine, no big deal. That is really going to be unusual considering how many more invasive vines there are than native ones. A lot of the time you're not going to be able to tell, either because you don't have the experience or because you're too far away. You could bring binoculars if you can use them without people thinking you're spying on them. The brochure just says that there are some of the invasive vines in the brochure have been commonly seen in the neighborhood. You're not calling it out necessarily on their property if you don't know for sure. You could add a note if you like when you are certain. Or if you want, you can let the owner know that you're not sure, but you just want them to think about checking it out and apologize for any false alarms. It is important not to get people out there killing their native vines. The most common native vines likely to cause confusion are summer grape and greenbrier. For either the landowners or you to start to tell the difference, we've created this tool at the bottom of our webpage, which is called an Airtable, with the help of a very nice person in Roanoke, actually, who helped us make this. It has a lot of photos and text about how to tell natives from invasive. We know that for most people, all plants just look alike, and there's really no substitute for hands-on experience. And so Heidi's going to be organizing volunteers who can show you some of the ropes, so to speak, if you need it and want that help. For most of these plants, once you've seen them, you'll find it easy to recognize them even from a distance. But some of them are going to require a closer look to make sure of the ID. This evening, we have the first of our quick presentations on invasive vine identification. We're going to record all the Zooms so you don't have to attend in real time. But of course, it's fun if you do, and it'll give you a chance to ask questions. This is a 5-year tree campaign. We don't want to rush things too much. But on the other hand, this is a climate emergency. And that brings me to my informal motto for our campaign. As I mentioned before, this whole project is a new idea. We're making it up as we go along, and we'll adjust as needed. So please send us your feedback and be patient with us. So thanks very much. I'm going to stop sharing. And Heidi, did you see any questions in the chat box?
So yeah, we had one question that asked if the PDFs of the brochures were available to send as an email to some of the people in their community. Rachel Walker said that people in her community might be more responsive to an email rather than putting it on the door.
That's fine. Whatever works for you. That's a good idea, especially if you know their email.
Yeah, we might need to make it available. Okay.
If there is a PDF. Was that the question? Is there a
Yeah,
PDF?
do we have it available?
Yeah, it's on our webpage right now.
I think I've been able to answer other ones so far. Oh, there was a question about putting house numbers on the maps, and are the maps being kept private?
Okay,
So,
yeah, all right. So the map, the outline of your neighborhood will show, but individual information about individual properties, we don't need you to send that to us, and we don't want to show it.
right. And then somebody asked if it would be appropriate to leave a note with the owner to ask if they could come back for a better look at a vine to get a proper ID.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We just want you to feel comfortable doing what you're doing. I, for another purpose, went around a few years ago to something like 100 and some neighboring properties and knocked on each door. And I found that it was fine. And I even did it by myself, but I wouldn't really recommend that people go knocking on doors by themselves. I think it probably would be better to go with a partner if you're going to do that. So, please don't get yourselves in trouble.
Yeah. So somebody else asked, oh, we can also use next door sites. I'm not sure that was a comment. I'm sorry, I thought it was a question. So somebody asked, could we voluntarily put our name into a contact list of some kind so we know volunteers in our areas? Which
yes, whether or not you tell us, we were planning to get you together to connect you with other people in your area. I mean, I guess if anybody doesn't want us to do that, let us know right away, but that our plan is to make it possible for you to communicate if you want to with other people.
Yeah. Somebody asked how we were going to address vines that weren't on private property. I think that's more through our surveys, right?
Right. if it's on private property, it's up to the owner to figure out what they're going to do about it. So it's complicated when we're talking about public land. And I've had so many conversations in the last few weeks that I'm not going to remember all of them, but let me try to kind of outline our thinking so far. First of all, the parks. I've been trying to reach out to all the park services to ask them two questions. One is, if someone wants to work on their on-park property as a volunteer, how do they do that? And most of them have responded to me and said there actually are mechanisms for people to do that, and it isn't all that difficult. For instance, National Park Service, we don't have all the details worked out, but it should be as simple as you go to an orientation about their rules. So for example, on National Park Service land, you're not allowed to dig anything. You can't dig up vines because there's concern about historical artifacts. So volunteers in that setting would simply be clipping. So you learn their rules, and then you will be authorized to go ahead and do it. So, or if you want to organize something specifically for a part of the park right next to the neighborhood, you're going to be able to do that if you want to. And when you're working in this setting to actually help with the vines, you're going to be under their auspices. In no situation will you be under our auspices removing vines. We don't have the capacity to provide the safety, et cetera, organizational ability. We just can't do that. So if you're going to be doing this yourself, it should be under the auspices of an organization that can do that. And the parks would be one for sure. All right, so the next thing is right-of-ways. The biggest, most obvious problem is VDOT right-of-ways. And we have learned, had seen this already as well, that it is possible to make an arrangement with VDOT to start managing the vegetation on a part of their property. You have to, there's an application process, and you would need, permission. You would need to follow certain safety guidelines if you're going to do it as a volunteer. But they will develop with you an encroachment agreement. Now, the situation in which this is very likely to arise is going to be in places that have a community association, where the common land sort of, the land itself does not include the easement. The easement is owned by VDOT, and you can make an arrangement for your landscaping company to do this, or you can spend the money to hire an invasives removal company, and they will allow you to do that. We have not yet had any extended conversations with Dominion or the electrical utilities companies, but I've had previous conversations with them, and there are similar arrangements can be made. For places like a library or other public property that is not in the park, at this point, it would basically be a matter of just talking to the librarian and alerting them to the problem, and then have them go through their channels to try and advocate for removal of that. Again, you can't go there saying plant Nova trees, authorized to do this, not at all. You need to be working through their channels. What other public areas might come up? Any other thoughts about that or questions that I haven't answered? Oh, and then one other thing I want to mention, I'm gradually accumulating a list from the parks of parks where they will just purely accept money. Right? So there are many parks that need to control their invasives. They're already completely aware of this. We do want to go ahead and survey those areas because, again, we want to get ammunition. And the guy in Tacoma Park, Jesse Buff, who was so wonderful, he said it's actually not that hard because you can count them off by the hundreds as you stand there. I mean, you can, it's not any more difficult and maybe even easier than doing a survey in a residential area. So if you're up to doing that, I think that would be a really good thing to do. And then anyway, if you don't want to volunteer for the park to help take it out, but you have a lot of money, or you work for a big organization like a big company that might donate money for this, these parks that I've been talking to are very happy to take your money and allow you to designate it for your neighborhood park and get it taken care of that way by professionals.
There's a question about school property, Margaret.
Yeah, well, that's good. Arlington School just let you do it. That's great, Jeff. Yeah, we don't have any official arrangement with any schools at this point. And whether or not you can go on school property to survey, it's public property, but I definitely wouldn't do it during school hours. I would do it outside of school hours. And then I would hope that the school itself could be convinced to do something about this. So perhaps they might have an environmental club who would like to get involved, for example, or they can get their maintenance people involved. I mean, usually a school isn't going to have huge, vast amounts of land, so they ought to really be able to manage it with their maintenance crew, but they may need some help figuring out what to clip and what not to clip.
And sometimes on their website, you can find information about their clubs or their organizations. And so if they have those, sometimes you can find out the person that's running the organization, and then have their email is available to you, so you can reach out to them.
Yeah,
So great if you could get, if they do have an environmental organization, to get the students involved in the program.
yeah, we're hoping that kids will get into the tree campaign in general and help publicize it with their friends and start doing things to rescue trees. Thanks to Sarah Holtz, the Scouts are going to be learning about this. Both the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts of America will be learning about this and hopefully participating also. Oh yeah, PTAs, right? That'd be another potential route to get to work with schools. Okay, do we miss any questions here? Okay. Well, please feel free to email us. Heidi would be your main point of contact, and you all have her email address. So let us know what else we should be doing or what we can do. Any suggestions, new things about new organizations we should know about. Love your help with this. So yeah, Heidi and I have both been out there surveying our neighborhoods already. It's quite fun. And I'm looking forward to getting the brochures to distribute them.
I just want to make one comment about the mapping. Completely understand the people that are not very electronic savvy. I am not actually myself. I seem to be enjoying doing the maps. But if you are having some difficulty understanding any of that, aren't able to map things appropriately, or any difficulty along that line, but you want to do the surveys, please just send me an email and maybe we can figure out an easy communication method, because I really want to get the surveys done, as well as communicating with neighbors. So obviously our communicating with neighbors and people is our primary goal. Secondary goal is the surveying, but I don't necessarily want to put any barriers in line for people who do surveys. So just want to put that out there.
Yeah. So we had a couple of questions. Is Fairfax Invasive Management Area aware of this program? Yes, they are, and they're ready to help new volunteers. They have some capacity limits, but looks like they should be able to stretch themselves to help with this. And the video will be available on our YouTube channel. We'll let you know, but you can always look on our Plant Nova Natives YouTube channel to find this. There'll be a playlist specifically for tree rescuers. So yeah, I really hope people will try and make a lot of noise in their neighborhoods, because I think this has the potential to grab people's attention and be a nice introduction to the whole native plant campaign, really. I mean, they actually save a lot of trees along the way.
I will send out an email once we know that the video is able to go up and include a link or how to get to it for anybody who's interested. And I know the few people that there were some people who were asking about it because they couldn't be here tonight. So
yeah, right. And just from looking around myself, I think it actually wouldn't be difficult for me to do a survey in the winter when the leaves are off, but I do have some experience, so I'll be kind of interested to see what you find. But I think even without experience, you won't be able to tell about the annual vines because they'll have shriveled up so much. But the perennial vines, like Japanese honeysuckle that is twisting around a tree, it may actually be easier to see in the winter than in the summer. Well, if you want to get going, that'd be great. But anyway, as I said, it's a 5-year campaign, so we can just take our time.
yeah, and hopefully the speaker on December 16th will be the goal of her was to concentrate on identifying some of these vines during the winter time. So she'll talk about some of the evergreens, but also what to look for some of our deciduous vines to identify it in the winter time, which will be helpful, I think.
Okay, thank you, Jeff, for your offer. All right, great. I think we'll close now and see some of you at our next webinar, and hope to hear from all of you.